Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is George Koulianos, and I'm here on behalf of the Clergy Family Initiative. As you can see, our steering committee is a robust group of people. It is chaired by Father Kostas Soteris at St. Basil Academy. Father Al Demos is in charge of the Ministerial Excellence Grant, and we have a very diverse group of clergy and lay leaders. Today, I'll start the program. Dr. Stavros at the Danielsen Institute is here via video. His presentation's been videotaped, and he's available by phone. I've just actually, we've been texting back and forth here. But thank you all very much for being here. And this is just basically a very brief update. The majority of the meat of the program is sort of next level. It's what we want to do next. Our program is data-based. We start with boots on the ground, use appropriate statistical measures, ask appropriate questions as based from the Danielsen Institute by psychologists, so we can get good answers to create good programs for clergy and presbyteros. And you can see our program started many years ago. It has grown as the need has grown, and we've gone from clergy to clergy families now. It was initially funded by the Lilly Endowment. For those of you that don't know, the Lilly Endowment was founded in 1936 by three heirs from the Eli Lilly family with $186,000 in seed money. 10 years ago, Eli Lilly stock was at about $45 a share. It's at $900+ a share now. They own 10% of Eli Lilly. The endowment does. It's a $70 billion endowment that is the largest endowment that supports Christianity across all denominations. And what they've recognized is that the economic challenges that clergy and their families face are a major impediment to ministerial excellence. What we forget is the fundamental building block of a healthy, vibrant, thriving, salvific parish is the clergyman and his family. It's that simple. We can talk about whatever program we want, but it all boils down to the clergyman, their health, their well-being, and their family. And that's what builds a healthy, vibrant parish. The Lilly Endowment has recognized that across all denominations, 60 different denominations have received grants, totaling $115 million. We're the proud recipients of $2.275 million of that, and we've raised an additional $900,000. So we're very fortunate. And we've touched the lives of over 42% of our clergy families in the Archdiocese, when you include clergy and presbyteros. When we went to the first Lilly Endowment training meeting, because we're required to go to training and have these extensive annual reports we have to prepare, to quote one of the leaders at Lilly Endowment from last May, from just a couple months ago, we were like deer in headlights. We were so overwhelmed and so scared. And we've come so far, and now we're a role model at the Lilly Endowment for what a clergy well-being program can be. So we've come a long ways, and we're very fortunate. Several people have supported our ministry, including Leadership 100, various family foundations, endowments, individuals, and we're very thankful to our donors. People underappreciate the challenges that clergy and their families face. Before we could even get a grant, we had to do research to justify that we needed a grant. And we're no different than any other denomination. Many of you have seen this slide before. I don't want to bore you, but the key is we have a culture of silence and shame within our church as it relates to clergy challenges. And that model has to change. If we're truly going to change the church, we have to change that. With our presbyteros, there are challenges there as well. We also know, and this is true on the clergy side and on the presbyteros side, because we have two separate data sets that say the same thing. Economic challenges directly correlate with well-being. Good. If you're not worried about how you're going to pay the power bill next week, you're a better clergyman, and your family is more at peace. Sometimes, and I am the guiltiest person in this room, But we are so consumed with doing a good job that we forget to take a deep breath and take care of ourselves. Clergy are no different than physicians or any other driven profession. You love what you do. From the Metropolis of Atlanta strategic report that I had the privilege of chairing that committee for His Eminence, Metropolitan Alexios, Father George, who's here in the audience. We learn how much clergy love their job and how hard they work. It is truly a calling, and you answer the call above and beyond. But sometimes you forget to take care of yourself, and that's important. There's a component of loneliness as it relates to presbyteros as well, because who are you going to talk to? Who are you going to confide in for clergy, the clergy family, and presbyteros? You know, you walk a fine line sometimes. But all that is interconnected, and I'll show you as we go. So the Clergy Family Initiative has done 45 presentations to about 2,700 unique individuals across the entire national church since 2017. When we first started the program, we wanted to know what was the church currently doing to help clergy and families and seminarians, because no one knew. No one had ever asked that question before. So the first year we compiled this data set. It was like going to the dentist to get a root canal. We couldn't get the data. But what you see, and the slide doesn't show it as well as it needs to, but this bottom right here is the key point here. Right there, this bottom grand total here. I'm very sorry, the magnification needs to be adjusted. But that is the meat right there. When we first started collecting this data in 2017, this number was about 1.5 million. Now, it's grown to 2.5 million in direct clergy and seminarian report. The word is getting out. Our grassroots, working from the bottom up approach, is exerting a change. And you can see the two leading metropolises for support are San Francisco and Pittsburgh. It's pretty impressive what we've been able to do. All these metropolises, these different ministries and programs in the church that have increased funding from 2022 to 2023 are in red, but we still have a ways to go. Our seminarians continue to have considerable debt at graduation, but you can see we've made considerable progress. The bulwark of the Clergy Family Initiative when we first started was the Ministerial Excellence Grant. Over a quarter of all clergy have received grants in the GOA. We've had 174 clergy apply. Roughly 25 just did the program, which is Dave Ramsey and a financial planning program, and realized they didn't need the grant. We've had an additional dozen or so that did Dave Ramsey just because they wanted to, and we were awarded over $1 million in grants. You can see that the Metropolis of Atlanta leads the way, and that credit goes to Father George and Metropolitan Alexios for their unconditional support from the very beginning, so thank you. In addition, the program works the longer clergy are in it. For every dollar clergy get, they reduce their debt by an additional 90 cents. That number varies anywhere from 90 cents to $1.10, depending on how many enrollees we have. But what we found is that clergy that are in the program longer, the first 60 clergy that enrolled in the program, this is what the clergy have done. Unfortunately, our lay leadership, our parishes can be challenged. This number has to change. As we've done our presbytera data sets, we've realized that presbyteros have unique challenges as well. In many respects, they're like Atlas holding up the world, because they have to maintain the clergy home while Father is off doing everything else. And they're underappreciated for the burden they carry. And sometimes it can be a little lonely, and sometimes they need someone to talk to. And that's why we've started the Presbytera peer learning groups, and it created a whole series of programs that are specific to presbyteros that have all been videotaped, recorded, and are on the Presbytera website. Secure, only for presbyteros and no one else. In addition to that, Lilly has challenged us, has tasked us with the responsibility of perpetuating the work beyond when the grant expires.
What?
along those lines, to perpetuate the ministerial excellence financial literacy component, we've been very fortunate that a presbytera and her family have donated $200,000 to fund that. And now it has grown to about 256 million as of yesterday. Who would have thought? So this money is embedded in the ABC. There is no hierarchy that can get to it. You didn't hear me say that, okay? Forgive me. It is for clergy, to be handled by clergy, for clergy, so it's done with discretion, utmost respect, and love and compassion. We want to grow this to $4 to $5 million. So if you have any friends that want to change the world, this is where they need to do it. So we are exclusive, we work for you. So we can only do what you want us to do. So we don't work for anyone else. That's why we've embedded in the ABC. So we need your firm feedback to know where we need to go and what other programming you would like. In this morning's talk, there were two things that were important as it related to the canonical bishops session. The first is we went from myth to reality, and that quote was from the Chancellor of Pittsburgh. And the other was, sometimes it takes a layperson to come out and speak boldly and loudly to affect change. Our clergy are too humble to do that, and that's a beautiful thing. So it's a partnership that's affecting this change.
Sure.
And now we'll get into Dr. Stavros' presentation, and if we have any questions, we can get them on the phone. Bear with me while I do my best to not mess this up. I tested it before and it worked, but now, of course, it's not working.
Damn it.
And I don't know what I'm doing. But George is talking about the next level. I don't know why it's not working. It worked before. I mean, we just tested it earlier.
Do you have presentation mode?
Yeah, am I doing something wrong?
Yeah.
What I'm not seeing is the little bar.
Yeah, it's not showing that. I don't know what I did wrong.
Do that. Oh, you know what? That's probably
I have audio
Let's see if this brings it.
plugged in. I have everything plugged in, I thought, because we tested it. I'm so sorry. Maybe if I take it out of screen mode. I did it when it wasn't in screen
If you
mode.
take it out and then put it back in, it may have been the pointing device to that. So
Hold on, now I don't know what to do.
if you escape out of here, so we get out of presentation mode.
Yeah,
And
there we go. Now it'll
Want
work.
to re-present it, I think we should be okay.
Oh, well, I don't know how to do that. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm technically challenged. I mean, worst case scenario, we can play it from that.
Right. Slideshow.
Fine.
Oops.
This is the meat of the program, so I'm very sorry.
We will get it working, no doubt. But you know what, you're right.
We
let's
can work
just-
it from that if we have
Just
to.
work it from here, because I think you're using online PowerPoint, so I'm not as familiar with that, but play it from there.
Oh, no, it says cannot play. It worked earlier sometimes.
There we go.
There we go.
Hello, and greetings from Boston University. My name is George Stavros, and I'm a psychologist and the executive director of the Danielsen Institute here at BU. It's a pleasure to be here in this format with you all, and this recorded portion of the presentation is just a part of the overall presentation that my co-presenter, Dr. George Koulianos, has for you today. My thanks to him, Dr. George, and to my dear colleagues, Father Costa Soteris, Presbyter Lisa Gusetis, and Father Alex Gusetis, with whom it's always a life-giving joy to work on any project. So thanks to you all. Okay, so my plan today is just to offer
Let's go. Which slide was it, Dr. George? Sorry, I ordered that. There we go.
It just come out. Want to go storage.
That doesn't cooperate.
Adults thinking about it, please.
Hit this again.
It's usually the space bar, but
Yeah, I think we need to just
space bar is
the way we
just
did it.
advancing it. Yeah, sorry about that. I was hoping to get it in full screen mode. Let's go back to getting it to
Yeah.
work. Apologies. Oops.
That's brilliant.
Which is your, just to click on that, which is your click button.
There you go. Hello, and greetings from Boston University. My name is George Stavros, and I'm a psychologist and the executive director of the Danielsen Institute. Enlightened. Yes. Go ahead, be you. It's a pleasure to be here in this format with you all, and this recorded portion of the presentation is just a part of the overall presentation that my co-presenter, Dr. George Koulianos, has for you today. My thanks to him, Dr. George, and to my dear colleagues, Father Costa Soteris, Presbyter Lisa Bucetis, and Father Alex Bucetis, with whom it's always a life-giving joy to work on any project. So thanks to you all. Okay, so my plan today is just to offer some of the current social science research related to clergy wellness, well-being, and health, and to put that in the context of a lifespan approach to clergy wellness, a kind of approach that takes into account that there are different needs at different times in our clergy and clergy families' lives. All right. I'm going to try and share something with you out here that goes off relatively smoothly. All right. I'm a little bit. You can see that. And proactive lifespan development model for clergy health and well-being. Right. So, our clergy, the clergy and clergy families of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese are precious, unique members of the body of Christ. You have roles and expectations that place you at the center of the spiritual lives of the people when you serve. The challenges that you and your families face in carrying out this sacred work in an increasingly contentious and secular culture. The challenges cannot be underestimated. And I think this is probably something that we see in both ancient patristic wisdom and certainly with our social science research that we'll be sharing will fun. So for this initial word from a late 12th century text on the priesthood, something I'm sure many of you are already familiar with, from St. John Chrysostom. I know the magnitude of this ministry and the great difficulty of the work. More stormy billows vex the soul of the priest than the gales that trouble the sea. All right, so one of the agreements that I have with Father Soteris is that I'm going to, for the complex simultaneous truths on how difficult and challenging life in the priesthood is for priests and their families, and also how much optimism and goodness and joy that is associated with it, which is exactly how I feel about it and we want to approach it. So, Father Costa, here you go. All right, two commitments that I want to share with our clergy and their families from a social science perspective is that in the therapeutic and research communities of which I'm a part and have a lot of copies in and access to, there is a small but growing body of evidence on clergy wellness. There is more and more of an effort being put into really trying to hear what the experience is of clergy and their families as they serve. And that's going to continue, certainly here at the Danielsen Institute. Second is that our goal in doing this research is not only to reduce distress and trauma related to ministry, even though that would be a fine enough goal, and it is part of our goal, but it's also to promote well-being, joy, resilience, flourishing, post-traumatic growth, and satisfaction in ministry. It's something that our researchers call the dual factor model. It's the idea that healing, growthful work is meant not just to make things hurt less. It's intended at its best to make life itself better. So those are our two commitments that we're working hard to see you, and that our work hopefully would be some contribution, however big or small, not only to reducing distress, but promoting bliss and well-being and joy. This slide is going to show up again at the end of the presentation, and it's throwing my conclusions first. So this is the punchline. If you need some time, you can stop right here, and we're going to hear where this thing ends up. Now, there be some stuff in between this slide and that showing at the beginning. I do want to wait to share what we already are strongly believing. So from a lifespan development perspective, a perspective that is thinking about that the journey, not just from ordination to retirement, to the end of active ministry, but look at from the beginning of theological education until the end of clergy person's life, at the end of the priest's life. It's like lifespan development, because we were human needs that whole time. And there are 5 components that we think are crucial and that are going to get worked on in their particularity within the Greek Archdiocese. But these are things that we think no matter what. 1, assessment. And just kind of that's more of a bookish word than we need it to be. What I mean is to evaluate the readiness, the emotional, relational, and spiritual readiness of those who want to and have entered ministry for the journey that is before them, before, during, and after seminary and ordination. So before anyone even enters seminary, at least it would make sense for there to be some assessment about their readiness for that part of the journey. During seminary, after seminary, before ordination, would just add ordination, and certainly after when a person is in active ministry, that there's a life-giving, reflective assessment process that gives each person who goes on that journey a chance to know where their strengths are, where their challenges are, and what they need to be working on. Second, formation. That you need a specialized combination of skill building and relational support held within an approach to spiritual growth and guidance that begins in seminary. So those who are preparing for ministry have the opportunity to begin building the skills necessary, the relational skills, the organizational skills, the technical stuff, the liturgical skills. That doesn't get away, that's vital, but there's also this kind of relational support that we believe should be in place in seminary and beyond. Peer support. A big component of this is coaching and mentorship for early career clergy from a social science perspective is shown to be very helpful, very useful. and peer consultation, more like that kind of a best practice and relational connection model for mid and later career clergy. Good continuing education programs funded and supported throughout the ecclesia. And what you mean by that is continuing education, unless it's like normalized, is often the first thing to slip in the midst of a busy life, and certainly in the midst of a life that is engaged with high levels of stress, distress, even traumatic experience. Just because the brain that's surrounded by that kind of intensity doesn't learn well. So what we're recommending is finding a way to structurally and naturally normalize regular continuing education programming for clergy throughout their time serving in ministry, and that it be supported literally from the top down, from the patriarchal level all the way to the parish council level. And finally, the one that is much easier said than done, but is probably the most important of all of them, is the establishment, the working at, and the establishment of higher and higher levels of institutional trust. And I can't sit here and say that I know how to make that happen or the particularities of what it would take to make that happen, but I can say with absolute moral certainty that without institutional trust, none of the other things really will matter that much. People need to know that that they're protected, they're supported, they're held accountable, that there's a back and forth of dialogue that can happen. So institutional trust. All right, we read sources that we're going to be drawing from with this presentation. So the Danielsen Institute recently put together an article, which is not published yet, that when it is, I'll make it available to the Center for Family Care. 82 empirical studies investigating risk factors and protective factors related to burnout, trauma, spiritual distress, and occupational hazards in religious leaders. So we started with about 400, but we whittled it down to 82 very relevant studies that talk specifically about risk factors and protective factors. So I'm going to share the summary of those things as part of the presentation. We also have done three empirical studies here at the Danielsen Institute in researching specifically Greek Orthodox samples of both clergy and presbyteros. So I'm also going to be sharing some of the information integrated one with the larger body of research of specifically things related to the Greek Orthodox sample. And finally, here at the Danielsen Institute, we have decades of experience working across multiple denominations with hundreds of candidates for theological education and ordination, as well as clergy at risk because of more extended evaluation. So we have a lot of kind of clinical, hands-on, very close information that we have as part of our understanding and our recommendations. All right. Let me pause for just a second and get the next segment ready for you all. Let's get it. Spin me 1 more second. Good. Pause. Good. Thank you. Hey, let's keep on going. So, let's try again very quickly to St. John Chrysostom. As I said, we're going to look at both risk factors and protective factors, and we're going to do that in 3 different segments. The first is personal risk factors and personal protective factors that have to do with clergy person themselves. Then we're going to talk about relational risk factors and relational protective factors, things that have to do more explicitly with their connections with other people. And then we're going to talk about systemic risk factors and systemic protective factors, things that have to do with, the church systems within which you all are serving. So, first, the person. If a man is passionate or mean or conceited or boastful or anything else of the kind, it unveils all his shortcomings and speedily lays them bare. So, how might that connect with some of the social science research? Let's start by looking at some of the risk factors, personal risk factors. These are things from 82 articles, the 3 studies specifically with our Greek Orthodox sample, and our direct clinical work with clergy candidates and clergy that really just show up as things that put clergy at great areas for burnout and for vicarious traumatization and for higher levels of distress in ministry. But people pleasing tendencies showed up. I'm gonna roll that again in relation, but I did want to highlight it initially here as a risk factor. And that doesn't mean wanting to do right by people or do a good job, which is a positive thing. This is what the kind of driven-ness to make sure nobody is unhappy with one or one's work. Second one is self-worth based on perceived success. Again, it's not a bad thing to want one's efforts to be fruitful, or to have some validation about where the worth of one's work. But this is a deep tie of one's basic sense of self-worth with outcomes. Third one is narcissistic tendencies. And there are 2 kinds of, and in social science research, 2 kinds of primary narcissistic tendencies, venerable and grandiose. So, and I want to just say a little bit about this one, because it's actually a pretty big finding in our research. So, narcissism is characterized, the kind of narcissism we're talking about here is characterized by fear, self-protection, seeing oneself as small, weak, seeing others as potentially threatening. Narcissistically vulnerable clergy, well, I would say more accurately described clergy who are in the midst of really struggling with narcissistic issues, because I don't think it makes sense to label a person as that's a more extreme version of narcissism is somebody who would be considered a narcissist. This is those tendencies living within a person and being a struggle. So these tendencies often lead to narcissistically vulnerable clergy having strong needs to be seen as good, they tend to hide their vulnerability and often focus attention on parishioners who didn't validate that goodness, and then tend to avoid maybe those who would make them feel worse about what they're doing. Narcissistically grandiose clergy, on the other hand, have a very strong need to be seen as exceptional. So the narcissistically vulnerable clergy want to be seen as good. Narcissistically grandiose clergy need to be seen as strong, exceptional, and can tend to be interpersonally manipulative, dominant, pursue power, pursue control over others. Both of these contribute to burnout and also to boundary violations. So something we keep an eye on. one of the findings from our research about Clergy-Laity, which turns out fits very much also with our clergy, is loneliness. That even in which high numbers of interpersonal contact and even a high number of satisfying relationships, most of our Clergy-Laity and our clergy would assert a pretty high level of loneliness. And finally, adding we have addictive coping strategies is another thing that's come out of the literature. And that certainly can involve substances, but also things like gambling, internet addiction, pornography addiction. There are lots of ways of escaping or dissociating from the pain of burnout that are compulsive and addictive. And those are certainly risk factors. So, what are some of the things that the literature shows as being protective for clergy? So there are some attributes that tend to be protective. People that have these attributes tend to be more resilient in the face of stress and distress. Self-compassion and empathy. So the ability to put into perspective that one can only do so much, and I was feeling, and it's closely related to repentance, because it involves both kind of understanding of one's own fallibility, but also of others, the ability to put that in the perspective. Somewhat paradoxically is a regulated desire to please others. So it's important to be able to tune into other people, have empathy for one, giving you benefit of the doubt. And at the same time, it's important to be able to have a differentiated stance or a boundary stance around any other person, but they're aimed so much when is able to do in relation to their desires and their hopes. And certainly for clergy and oftentimes for clergy families, because us and children, there's some expectation that they be something that they can't possibly be, and then disappointment when they're not that. And so to regulate the desire to please others about being what they want you to be, hugely important protective factor. Humility comes out very big in being a protective factor. And let me give you a quick social science definition of humility to use. So humility in this context consists of accurate self-knowledge as one component. So nothing self on no ourselves, openness and hospitality towards others. So being able to be open and attentive to others. No concern for social status. So not seeking the outcome of social status as a first priority. Solidarity with those who are oppressed and suffering. And then the ability to manage feelings of shame and pride. So one more time, under the social science definition of humility: accurate self-knowledge, hospitality towards others, low concern for social status, solidarity with the oppressed, and ability to manage feelings of shame and pride. Which the reason this comes up so big is because clergy role, this number of ways in it, just pulls for so much internal storming around shame and pride, around being good and not being good, around being love and good, around being God's representative. And we know that those things mean something important, but if they get taken out of context, can be part of being a risk factor. So humility is a huge protective factor, as a gratitude, hope, optimism, resilience, and courage. A sense of living out ends values at work. So if you're able to go in to work and whatever it is you do, pastorally, liturgically, or administratively, to feel like you're living out what you've been called to do, very protective. having a strong goal orientation and some autonomy at work, being given room to do what one is good at doing and what one thinks is important to do. Having big meaning-making capacities, curiosity about life and the world and other people, the ability to seek new perspectives, protective, realistic expectations of and aspirations for ministerial work, an awareness of the complexities and challenges of being a clergy person. That's kind of a grounded reality and acceptance of the limitations of ministry, while that and actually enables people to open up to the wonders and miracles of it. So those are attributes. Activity that is protected includes established routines that promote health. That could be mental, physical, spiritual health. We cannot emphasize enough the power of fitness, physical fitness to well-being and for being protective against particularly trauma. And having regular routines for that kind of fitness is hinged. Obviously, routines of prayer, fasting, and spiritual life, foundational, and staying strong and healthy mentally. So the work-life balance, well, the mother easier said than done, but that would include regular engagement with activities and interests outside work. Continuing education opportunities was another finding within those 82 articles with those clergy in really learning, who in a sense were, I guess that would be in the story of Martha and Mary, the Marys were able to kind of pull away from the busyness of periods of time and just sink into learning. And then from some of our recent research, financial literacy is a protective factor to how to manage one's finances or to have the security that they are managed well. Usually important. Okay, let's move on to relational factors. All right, let's see what Archbishop Chrysostom has to say about this one. That all who surround him, the priest, are ready to smite and overthrow him. Not only his enemies and foes, but many of those who pretend to like him. But of course, I'm sorry, Koulianos goes a little diet, but it is an important partial truth. Is Banladi's the whole truth, though, and where you talk about protective factors as well as risk factors. And the truth of those, I think, probably everyone in the world can speak to at least having some significant experience with really difficult and sometimes malevolent entanglement with others that unfortunately oftentimes in parishes, not exclusively. So let's take a look at some of the findings from the research. Okay, so one of the number of findings that we got first from our Greek Orthodox study, which was back in 2012, that's been affirmed in multiple studies since, is that relational aggression by parishioners is one of the top stressors faced by clergy across denomination. In these contentious times, it may be even more the case than it was in 2012. Second, exposure to traumatic pastoral situations. There's often a lot of relational trauma. Let's see. I just aware that clergy are so often first responders into situations for which they maybe receive some training, maybe no training, but to try to be responsive and guide people towards resources that the person may not be ready to accept around things like, mental health crises, domestic violence, traumatic injury and death, traumatic illness, checks, the hardest things about being human, oftentimes clergy are the first responders for. And so the exposure to that is a risk factor for burnout and for vicarious traumatization. And the concept and avoidance, we're talking about high intensity, meaning every marriage has conflict, every marriage has avoidance. But high levels of that, I guess what that means is when clergy and their spouses are in a really hard place together over a prolonged period of time, it exposes them to a lot greater risk for burnout and the other traumatic responses. And you see in where protective factors, the opposite works as well when people, when clergy and their spouses have a chance to really work at their relationship in a better place, a satisfying place, hugely protect. Okay, lack of available support from friends and colleagues, and certainly struggles in the relationship with God. That's when the research studies that we had, those are the top 5. Okay, let's take a look at some protective factors. First, a deeply rooted spiritual engagement. Strong relationship with God is hugely protected. No surprise there. I think what's important to acknowledge is not just to do with personal prayer life, a mystical prayer life, a deep, loose-based connection with God, but it also has to do with other areas in which clergy and their families can experience sacred connection, loving, intimate, tender connection with God. Another protective factor: support, encouragement, and accountability from friends and family. They're implemented because really encouragement kind of makes sense intuitively, but accountability is actually the really important protective factor. Knowing what is expected of one, that is reasonable, and having some regular checkpoints along the way. Openness and vulnerability with trusted others. Vulnerability comes across time and time again in these studies as something that is often in short supply because vulnerability often requires trust. But when clergy and clergy spouses and families have spaces within which they can truly let down their guard and be vulnerable, the rest of the time, when they have to go back into the fire, they're so much more protected for having been able to do that. As we talked about earlier, valuable satisfaction, nurturing one's spousal relationship, key protective factor. Investment in and enjoying one's family. I mean, if you're just looking at it from an outcome perspective, to invest, what this said was to invest in and enjoy one's family, was greater resilience, longevity, and effectiveness as a priest. That's the social science perspective. My guess is we probably could find that other places in our patristic tradition as well. On conflict fluency training, conflict fluency is a technical term that describes a growing body of training, which I would recommend for everyone do and play back continuing education for the Archdiocese as a whole. It's just being better in spaces where there's difference, whether that's minor difference or sharp, hard difference. Conflict fluency is about being effective in a leadership role in the midst of differences. I'm lecturing and coaching, especially in the early vocation of development. We mentioned that earlier, hugely protected. And then things like psychotherapy, peer support groups, and retreats, all mentioned as protective. Not always easy to access, but protective. All right, will you keep this thing rolling now? And understand what that's systemic, protective, and risk factors. So, Archbishop, nonetheless, a priest ought to be sober-minded and penetrating in discernment, and possess 1,000 eyes looking in every direction, for he lives not for himself alone, but for a great multitude. So, when people say this quote, because especially that idea that the priest is operating in the midst of a great multitude. It's not just about what's going on over the it's not just about what's going on between you and, individual people or groups of people. It's also about what's going on between you and parish or the leadership of the parish, the parish in general, or the metropolis, or the Archdiocese. There are all these progressive systems within which a priest is wending their way. So here are some of the risk factors and protective factors associated with that reality. So, first risk factor, severe work pressure and unrelenting demands based on institutional and cultural expectations. So it explains that longer within the literature because the assumption is in most lives of clergy, there are going to be times where there is severe work pressure, and there's going to be times where there's unrelenting demands. With the pressure and demands are based on expectations that, hey, that's just how it is. And when no resources then to hold that, no protective factors, it's incredibly corrosive to feel trapped within those expectations institutionally and culturally. To financial pressures, the study that we did recently around financial literacy showed that certain aspects of well-being were improved when money was not a primary level concern. Having the resources to pay one's bills, to have some movement towards some security down the line, to be able to save something is a huge protective factor. To not have it, severe risk factor. Lack of institutional support in times of conflict and need. I came across initially in our big Orthodox sample the idea that in conflicts with parishes or parish councils or individual parishioners, the idea that a priest experiences the leadership, whether it's in the parish or in the metropolis, that they have their back, that they're not going to get hung out to dry. Hugely protective. To not have it is it's very much a risk factor. Transfers and new assignments, financial and family stress, big-time risk factors. How it's going with parish councils, parish leaders, influential parish families. The research shows that those are big-time risk factors. And then campaigns to relieve the priest. I think that one came in a weak Orthodox survey on about quite a few times. When that kind of energy gets going in the parish, I'm sure there's a good benefit. It can attest it's just brutal. Okay, protective systemic factors. Supportive structures at local, regional, and national denominational levels. So at every level where there's some measure of connection and accountability, it's that very institutional trust thing. It's who's got my back. It's where can I turn? Can I tell my whole story? Can I get the help that I need in a situation? Easier said than done. But in the literature where that's in place, and not that any places where it is in place, it makes a huge difference. They're valued and supported by ecclesial and parish leaders, pretty much tied to that first one. Expectations of manageable work hours and calendar. This is to push against those cultural and institutional expectations of overworking. Autonomy and flexibility to attend to home responsibilities. We found in those studies, the Lilly study, if one does not feel like their work is pulling them away from basic responsibilities at home, and there's enough flexibility to not always leave work to take care of something, but to do it as needed, it increased resilience and decreased burnout. ample professional development opportunities, being that idea of lifelong learning, which goes along with high Spain development out of financial stability, literacy coming from our study, the priests and presbyteros around financial literacy. Okay. We're getting close to finishing up. I know we don't have a whole lot more time. So, famous slide of the Archbishop. The priest must be protected on all sides by steel armor, by intense earnestness and perpetual watchfulness concerning his manner of life, lest someone discovering an exposed and neglected spot should inflict unduly wound. So why that? Good. Here's why I use that quote. If you're on that side, if you look at it from a certain perspective, like it was up to the priest himself to figure out all that. How to be protected by steel armor, to go out and get the armor, to have to be intensely earnest, and how to be perpetually watchful concerning his manner of life. And we are going to thought of a theologically, I'm going to get out of my skis on this one, but I'm going to guess that the Archbishop, in this instance, was taking a more of a Trinitarian perspective on this, and that is that those things need to be cultivated between the priest, the Trinity, and the systems and the people within the systems that have responsibility for the priest. So it's a team effort to give the priest all that protection, the steel armor, the opportunity to develop intense earnestness and perpetual watchfulness, to tap into institutional trust, to tap into continuing education, to tap into peer support and coaching and mentoring, things that I think get at what Archbishop Chrysostom is taught about there. All right, as promised, we're going to finish where we started, lifespan development resources. So, of all the research that we just talked about, these things are the things that we think would be good places to start and to get the ball rolling. Figure out that assessment from before seminary.
So we'll conclude Dr. Stavros' presentation at this point. That covers pretty much everything. Father Andrews has a program tomorrow morning at 10:30 on clergy burnout that looks very good. I'm sorry I won't be able to attend. And I think we'll find that very useful. To conclude, I would like to thank all of you for coming today. But the next level is to create a clergy well-being model that looks at all the elements together. Dr. Stavros' paper was just published last week from Danielsen. They took over 500 different clergy well-being studies across all the pastoral psychology literature. It was published this last week. They found the 82 studies that were relevant as related to asking the appropriate questions and sufficiently powered to be statistically valid. And they published a review of all of those papers. And again, that's the author, Heidinger, Pastoral Psychology, June 24th, last week. And basically, the take-home message is that clergy families are unique. And we haven't paid enough attention to developing sort of the infrastructure across all denominations to really care for clergy and their families. And the next level is to create that same unifying element within our GOA and in our metropolises. Because there are three things that feed on each other as it relates to self, and that can include any number of things. Relational not only includes the clergy family and marriage, but just how you interact with parish council members, parishioners, and then organizational as it relates to our metropolises, our chancellors, our vicars, and our archdiocese. So there's a lot that can be done, but you as clergy have to decide if you want it done. And if you do, we'll fight for it. But if you don't, it's okay. We've accomplished a lot. And I just close. If you have anyone that wants to support the ministry, You just send it to the Clergy Family Initiative, to the Archdiocese. We've been very fortunate that with a very soft campaign, we've been able to raise, combined between the endowment and the funding to match the Ministerial Excellence Grant, over $1 million. And I close with this slide. I do it with every program, forgive me. This is Father Jim Bogdan of blessed memory. He happens to be my father-in-law. And in this photograph, he has dementia and doesn't even know his name. But yet, you can see the love that exists here. And the take-home message is a priest until the day they die. And for that, I thank you.